lately my mind's been on the humble oil flask. Oil flask is a often misunderstood piece of equipment, but it is a pretty powerful one once you get down to it. How it works is if we cover an enemy in it, they basically get a debuff for 1 minute that anytime they take fire damage, they take a flat additional 5 fire damage. People often get this confused because it has an also statement that goes into what happens if you pour it on the ground. That only lasts for 2 rounds, so some people think that it only does 2 instances of damage if you cover an enemy in it, but that's incorrect. They're 2 different effects, whether you're putting it on a person or on the ground. So I wanted to take this effect of throwing it over a person and do a whole build out of it. This is the Arsonist. This video was brought to you by the Crystals of Zleth, a survival solo campaign created by Obvious Mimic. They are the creators of the Wolves of Lanston, a mystery solo campaign that I quite enjoyed. I'm quite excited to jump into this one, and if you want to pre-order it at a discount price, you can using our description down below. To begin the Arsonist career, we want to choose a lineage, and the lineage is very wide open. You can go High Elf to pick up a fire-based cantrip. This will allow you to start being an Arsonist at level 3, as opposed to level 4, but since that's not a huge weight, you can honestly take basically whatever lineage you want and you're going to be completely fine. I went with the Fire Genasi just because it fit the flavor. As for our stats, we're going to start out with a primary in Dexterity, a secondary in Intelligence, and a tertiary in Constitution. Anything left over, chuck into Wisdom to try and buffer our Wisdom saves a little bit. Moving into our level by level breakdown, we're going to go 3 levels into Thief Rogue. We're then going to go 6 levels into Bladesinger Wizard. And then from there we have some options that we'll discuss once we get there. Jumping into the level by level breakdown, the first 3 levels are pretty simple and straightforward. We're going to be a Thief Rogue. So we're going to be setting up our sneak attacks. Once we get cunning action, we can go do hit and runs if we so choose. And once we get Thief, we can then do a bunch of fast hands things like pickpocketing our enemies, throwing down caltrops, all the normal thief stuff. As for our expertise, I'm going to be taking it in stealth and sleight of hand. And once we hit level 4, we're going to be jumping into Bladesinger Wizard. The 2 most important cantrips we pick up at this level are going to be Green Flame Blade and Firebolt. This will give us an option to basically bonus action, throw oil over an enemy, and then action do one of those cantrips to instantly capitalize on the fire damage. Now 5 extra damage doesn't sound like much, but when you consider that when you upgrade a sneak attack, it's a d6 die, which is just an average bump of 3.5 damage. So this is like doing 1.5 extra sneak attack die just by doing that extra 5 damage. It doesn't seem like a lot, but when you get down to the math of it, it can actually be quite a bit. For example, at this level, we're throwing a Firebolt for a d10 damage. That basically doubles the Firebolt's damage. Now, I'm not going to be discussing every single wizard spell that's good, because just take the good ones. However, I will be saying some that typically you wouldn't pick, but you might pick here because they have some interesting synergies. Here, we have Tasha's Caustic Brew. Now, you can use Tasha's Caustic Brew with an action. If they fail to save, they're going to be covered in basically acid, and they're going to be taking damage every turn, and they can use their action to take it off. Well, we can use our bonus action to throw Alchemist's Fire. What Alchemist's Fire does is it covers them and it does fire damage every turn, and then they can use their action to take it off. So for an action bonus action combo, we can cover them in 2 substances that deal continual damage over time, but they have to use an action to only remove 1 at a time. So in just 1 turn, you use an action and bonus action to take up 2 of their actions to try and get that damage over time effect off. Pretty neat. It's also worth mentioning here that the Oil Alchemist Fire combination is really powerful. First you get oil on them, then you hit them with the Alchemist Fire. The Alchemist Fire is going to do fire damage every single turn, which is going to then proc the oil damage. So now it's happening automatically for a whole minute both, until they remove the Alchemist Fire, of course. A flavor spell I'd mention here is Fog Cloud, which is typically one of my favorite first level spells, but by adding smoke to it, it can stay in that Arsonist theme, which is pretty fun. When we talk about our second level spells, 2 really stand out. We have Flaming Sphere and we have Scorching Ray. Both of them are multi-hit fire-based damage, 1 concentration, 1 not. Scorching Ray, for example, normally does 2d6 per hit. That's 7 damage on average. So again, we're nearly doubling every single hit. And if all 3 hit, that's an extra 15 damage for them having oil on top of them. Similarly, Flaming Sphere can ram into an enemy as our bonus action, proc the fire damage, proc that oil damage. Then if they don't move during their turn, they're going to take that fire damage again, which procs it again. This combos pretty well with Booming Blade. So we can start the Flaming Sphere, get our oil going, and then we can go in, hit them with a Booming Blade, hit them with our Flaming Sphere. They either have to stay there, fire, take the flaming sphere damage, or they have to retreat, taking an opportunity attack from us, and booming blade damage all at the same time. So we can set up some situations where we can do a lot of damage really quickly, no matter what option our enemies choose. Another mention here is Tasha's Mind Whip. Once again, synergizing pretty freaking well with Alchemist Fire. Tasha's Mind Whip puts them in a position where they have to decide, do I use my action, bonus action, or movement? Well, by throwing Alchemist Fire on them as well, now they have to choose, do I use my action just to remove this Alchemist Fire, or do I continually take this fire damage? There's a lot of combos we're getting from combining our spells with our items. That's pretty neat. I would say these second level spells are probably the high point of what this build does. That 5 damage may be quite a bit, but as we move on, it starts to look less and less powerful. So this third level is kind of the in-between area where this oil strategy is going to be shining. The spells I'm going to be taking a look at here might include a Chardalon Stride, which can turn our movement into fire damage, and then we can use our action to hold a movement so we can do it during their turn as well, so we can proc it a second time in one round. That's not bad, but it's also not crazy good. It's only doing a d6 of fire damage plus 5. A spell I normally wouldn't look at all is Melf's Minute Meteors. This is an ability that for an action we create some meteors, then as a bonus action we can throw 2 of those meteors, each of them doing a 2d6 fire damage on a failed save and then half that much on a successful save. So it's going to be guaranteed fire damage twice for a bonus action. This is pretty awesome to set up with something like Scorching Ray. This is probably the most instances of fire we can get. First we hit them with oil, then we go ahead and start doing Scorching Ray combined with Melf's Minute Meteors, and we're going to be hitting them upwards of 5 times per round of fire damage. That's 25 extra fire damage, which is a lot of extra fire damage. Once we hit 4th level in Wizard, we're going to get an ASI. I'm going to be putting it into our intelligence. Even just having 16 to 18 dexterity seems like enough for this build for me. We're going to want to start pumping intelligence after that. So at this point, I'm going to be looking at picking up intelligence because I assume we got that 16 dexterity from just our initial build. And then from there, if you had an odd, you can pick up any of the amazing intelligence half feats. Fey Touched always stands out. I would personally pick up Shadow Touched and pick up Distort Value because it just feels very roguish. So if I'm mixing this Wizard and Rogue, I feel like Distort Value is a good spell to represent that. The next spell I'm going to be talking about is going to be a stretch. It's Summon Lesser Demons. Now, DMs have so much flexibility around these spells. Some do really powerful things, some do terrible things, but if they let you choose the lesser demon that you can summon a bunch of cacklers. Now, this is by no means guaranteed because they're going to attack you and your allies as often as they're going to attack your enemies. However, all of these cacklers, and you're going to summon 4 at once, are going to have Firebolt. And considering they're demons and they like to cause chaos, if they hit an enemy with Firebolt and they explode into flame, they'd probably enjoy that. So there's a good chance that they don't even use Firebolt. There's a good chance that it doesn't even summon the correct demon. There's a good chance that even if you did summon them, they decide to attack you or use their chain whips. So there's a million things that can go wrong here, but let's pretend for a second that the stars align and your DM is super gracious and lets you have your moment. You have 4 creatures that can throw firebolts at your enemy who's now covered in oil. So you can get 4 procs per turn, and the second that they turn on you, you can just end your concentration and they all disappear. I really haven't dived deep into the fact that we're a Bladesinger. Bladesingers are just incredibly powerful, and they will allow us to go onto the front line whenever we would particularly like, although not all the time because we're going to run out of blade songs eventually. However, once we hit level 6 with them, we're going to get an option to do a cantrip and an attack per turn. This is really cool with this build because it allows us to do a sneak attack and fire damage per turn, even at range. So we can bonus action, throw our oil on someone, action, then throw a firebolt at them, then second attack, shoot a crossbow at them. So we procced our fire damage, now we're going to get an extra attack. That includes our sneak attack on top of it. This can also be as much of a setup for us going into melee combat. Now we can do oil, green flame blade, normal attack, so we're dishing out the damage. I've said this before, but I'll say it again. Bladesinger's multi-attack is not equal to everyone else's multi-attack. Cantrips scale, and by mixing in a cantrip, we're getting both cantrip scaling and our extra attack scaling. It is more similar to getting the 3rd attack from being a fighter than it is from getting 2 attacks from being a fighter. So level it accordingly. It seems like we're getting it 1 level later, but really, in many ways, we're giving it 5 levels earlier than the fighter is. It's very, very powerful. From here, we have a choice. We can either go more into Rogue or more into Wizard, and we'll probably continue in that class until the end of our career. So it's really a question of flavor. Are you wanting to feel more more roguish with this build? And are you wanting to rely on your 3rd level and down spells? Or are you wanting to upgrade your spellcasting to be more of a wizard spellcaster, eventually getting 9th level spells? I think going the wizard route is probably the more powerful route, but for this build, I kind of really liked the roguish flavor, so I would probably personally go the more rogue route, and it forces me to continually rely on the oil scorching ray combos because that's the peak of what we get to. It won't be as powerful, but I do like it for flavor purposes. I had a lot of fun building this build. I hope you guys enjoyed hearing about it. If you want to support the channel, go down, hit that subscribe button, and I will see you on the next time. Peace!